This is how it ends for so many fighters. Not because they aren't strong, not because they don't train hard, but because they keep making the same mistakes, the ones that separate the elite from everyone else. Are you making these mistakes? Because if you are, it doesn't matter how much you train. You'll stay stuck. You'll never break past that ceiling. But today we're changing that. Let's go. Chapter 1. Training on Autopilot, the Silent Killer. There he is, the same fighter from earlier, back in the gym. The intensity of the fight is replaced by sweat-soaked repetition, but the mistakes are still there. His guard drops for just a second. His punches are a bit too slow, a bit too predictable. His movements are robotic, rehearsed. Another training drill. Another mistake. You see, this is where it starts. Training without awareness. Most fighters make this mistake. They show up, do the rounds, repeat what they've been taught, but they don't think. They don't adapt, they don't analyze. And this lack of intentional training, it's why they'll never break through. This is not about the work you're putting in, it's about the quality of that work. And the worst part? These mistakes are invisible to most. They're easy to miss in the middle of a heavy training session, but for a fighter at the top, they are fatal. The same fighter throws a slow punch and it's countered. The guard drops just a split second and he eats a punch. These small errors, these tiny gaps in technique, are what hold you back from being elite. And here's the reality check. You can't afford these mistakes anymore. If you keep training like this, just going through the motions without focusing on improvement, you'll stay stuck at the same level, never reaching your full potential. Because if you don't fix this, you're just wasting time. Chapter 2. The illusion of hard work. When more isn't better, the sweat drips. The fighter grits his teeth. Another round, another rep, another day, pushing his body to the limit. From the outside, it looks like he's doing everything right. He's training harder than ever. More hours in the gym, more rounds in the ring, more weight on the bar. But here's the brutal truth. More doesn't always mean better. Fighters get trapped in this mindset, thinking that the secret to reaching the elite is simply doing more. More sparring, more running, more lifting. But what they don't realize is that they're not optimizing. A fighter drilling the same sloppy technique over and over. Another throwing wild punches in exhaustion, form breaking down. A tired athlete mindlessly hitting pads, not thinking, just doing. You and them are not just training habits, but reinforcing bad habits. Every single session, you're either getting better or you're cementing the very weaknesses that will cost you in a real fight. Fighters at the highest level don't just train harder, they train smarter. Every round has purpose, every rep is refining something, every mistake is corrected in real time. And if you're not doing that, you're stuck in the illusion of hard work. Because the truth is, mindless effort doesn't create champions. Deliberate practice does. If you're putting in hours but not seeing progress, ask yourself, are you actually improving, or are you just grinding in place? Let's take a moment. Be honest with yourself. You've trained hard, you've put in the work, but have you ever felt like you're just spinning your wheels, grinding, sweating, pushing, but not actually improving? Drop a comment below. What's the biggest struggle holding you or an athlete of yours back from reaching the next level? Is it bad habits, poor strategy, mental blocks? No excuses, just real talk. The best fighters aren't afraid to face their weaknesses, so let's put it out there and grow together. Chapter 3. Fighting without a brain. Why strategy beats strength. The bell rings. A fight begins. Our fighter moves forward, aggressive, determined. He throws powerful strikes, but they miss. His opponent slips, counters, and suddenly he's the one getting hit. Again and again. He's strong, he's fast, he's conditioned, but none of it matters, because strength without strategy is useless. The biggest difference between an elite fighter and an average one isn't just power or speed, it's fight IQ. A fighter blindly chasing his opponent, wasting energy. Another one throwing the same predictable combinations, easy to read and counter. Someone relying only on brute force, getting outmaneuvered by a more technical opponent. You can train your body to its limits, but if you don't train your mind, you will always be a step behind. The truth is, Fights are won before the first punch is thrown. They're won in how you study your opponents, how you adapt in real time, how you exploit weaknesses instead of just attacking blindly. Elite fighters don't just react, they control the fight. They set traps, they force mistakes, they dictate the pace. And if you're just fighting on instinct, hoping to overpower your opponent, you've already lost. You can't just fight harder, you need to fight smarter. Every second in the cage is a chess match, and if you don't start thinking, you'll always be the one getting played. Chapter 4. The Weakest Link, How Mental Fragility Destroys Fighters. The fight is slipping away. Our fighter is in deep water. His breathing is heavy. His opponent is pressing forward. Panic flashes in his eyes for just a moment, and that moment is all it takes. He hesitates, and in that hesitation, he loses. Because at the highest level, fights aren't just won with technique or strength. They're won in the mind, and this is where most fighters fail. A fighter looking hesitant before throwing a punch. Another second-guessing himself mid-fight, missing an opportunity. One who crumbles after a bad round, unable to reset and adjust. Physical training means nothing if your mind breaks under pressure. At the elite level, every fighter is tough. Every fighter is skilled. What separates champions from the rest is their mental resilience. But here's the hard truth. Most fighters don't train their mind at all. They let doubt creep in. They hesitate when it matters most. They fear making mistakes instead of trusting their training. And worst of all, they carry losses with them. One bad round turns into a bad fight. One bad fight turns into self-doubt. And suddenly, they're not fighting their opponent anymore. They're fighting themselves. At the elite level, confidence isn't optional. It's a weapon. If you don't believe in yourself completely, you've already lost. You need to train your mind as much as you train your body. Visualization, mental conditioning, handling, pressure. If you're not doing this, you're not ready to compete at the highest level. And when the moment comes, the moment where everything is on the line, the stronger mind will always win. Chapter 5. Breaking the Cycle. Why most fighters never fix their mistakes. The pattern repeats. Another fight, another defeat. The same fighter sits in the corner, shaking his head. Frustration, disbelief. He trained hard. He put in the work. So why is he still losing? This is the moment where most fighters fail, not inside the ring but outside of it, because instead of fixing their mistakes, they repeat them. And this is why so many fighters stay stuck in the same place for years. A fighter watching footage of his loss, but ignoring the mistakes. Another doing the same ineffective training routine, expecting different results. One making excuses. I just had a bad night. But here's the truth. If you don't take responsibility for your own evolution, you will never reach the top. Elite fighters obsess over their weaknesses. They don't just accept losses, they study them. They analyze every mistake, every opening they gave, every bad habit that cost them. And they don't just notice it, they correct it. If you're not actively fixing your game, you're not improving. If you're losing in the same way again and again, it's because you refuse to change. At the highest level, adaptation is everything. You either evolve or you get left behind. Chapter 6. The Comfort Zone. The gym is full of movement. Fighters spar, hit pads grind through their routines. But look closer, some are just going through the motions, repeating what they already know, staying comfortable. And comfort kills fighters. It's deceptive. It feels good to be confident in your techniques, to land the same combos over and over. But what happens when you face someone who doesn't play by your script? What happens when you get dragged into deep waters? Most fighters never push past their limits because they train in a way that feels safe. They only spar with the same people. They only practice their best techniques. They avoid discomfort because discomfort exposes weakness. But here's the truth. If you're not training in the areas where you struggle, you're not improving. You're just reinforcing your limitations. One doing what he always does, dominating sparring partners he's already beaten 100 times. Another struggling, getting beaten, working through uncomfortable scenarios. Who do you think will grow? The best fighters in the world don't just train what they're good at. They attack their weaknesses. They force themselves into difficult situations. They spar with better fighters. They put themselves in bad positions and find a way out. Because in a real fight, you don't get to choose your comfort zone. So ask yourself, when was the last time you truly felt uncomfortable in training? If you can't remember, you're not evolving. You're staying exactly where you are. And that means someone else, someone who is willing to suffer, will surpass you. The chaos of training, the frustration of mistakes, the weight of repeated failure, all of it fades. If you recognize these mistakes, the good news is you can fix them. But you need to act now. We see fighters adjusting, coaches stepping in, correcting postures, refining technique. A fighter tightens his guard, another sharpens his counter-strikes. Training isn't just repetition anymore, it's intentional, and then we see it. The same fighter from before, the one who made the same mistakes, the one who hesitated. But something is different now. His movements are sharper, his eyes are focused, his mindset has changed. Elite fighters aren't just more talented. They eliminate weaknesses. They evolve constantly. Back to where it all began, the same opponent, the same fight. But this time, he's ready. The strike comes, just like before. But now, instead of getting caught, he sees it. He anticipates. He reacts. He counters. The opponent drops. The difference between losing and winning is in the details. Stop making the mistakes that hold you back and start training like an elite fighter. Be better. Train smarter. Evolve. Your journey doesn't end here. If you're ready to take your training to the next level, this is just the beginning. Subscribe to the channel for more breakdowns, fight strategies, and elite training methods. Drop a comment. What's the biggest mistake you've seen fighters make? Hit the like button if you're committed to evolving your game. Train smarter. Fight harder. Become elite. Subscribe now. Let's go.